let's talk about scapegoating. Here's the thing. Every bully needs a victim, and every narcissist, sadly, needs a punching bag. Scapegoating is often done to get the scapegoater off the hook and leaves the scapegoat holding the bag, and the beat goes on. It's your fault. A scapegoat is a person who is blamed for the mistakes or sins of another person. It's a term that apparently has biblical origins. The scapegoat gets the worst of the narcissist. They take the hardest psychological blows. And since the narcissist needs to take his or her insecurity out on someone, sadly, wherever there's a narcissist, not too far away, there's a scapegoat. Scapegoating is a common dynamic in narcissistic relationships. It typically involves a person zeroing in on one person and blaming them for the things that are happening to them and giving them undesirable things to do. They may insult them, they may belittle them, they may devalue them, and treat them differently and always more poorly than they do other people. Because scapegoating is a form of projection, of deflection, of not taking responsibility, of punishing people that are not congruent with the narcissist's grandiose self. The scapegoat becomes sort of a repository or a bucket that receives the narcissist's rage, anger, and misery. The phenomenon of scapegoating is deeply painful. It's emotional abuse, plain and simple. The scapegoat is typically someone who antagonizes the narcissist in a very specific way. And there are multiple pathways through which scapegoating happens. The narcissist perceives the scapegoat as someone weak or undesirable. They perceive the scapegoat as a threat, or they perceive the scapegoat as vulnerable, perceiving the scapegoat as a reminder of the worst parts of themselves. The simplest version of scapegoating is that the narcissist scapegoats the person that they perceive as somehow weak or undesirable. This is in many ways a sort of classical bullying presentation. And in an intimate relationship, this type of scapegoating may happen if a partner is deemed to be empathic or kind. In this model, the scapegoat is considered less than, and in some ways, that likely serves as some sort of twisted rationalization for the narcissist. It is also quite possible that the always insecure narcissist preys upon whomever they perceive is weaker out of fear, because the narcissist is afraid of their own weakness, and in that way it becomes an interesting form of projection. A second form of scapegoating also derives from the classical form of bullying. In this case, scapegoating someone that the narcissist perceives as a threat. In this case, the narcissist goes after the person who may be better than the narcissist, someone who's smarter, more attractive, more successful, stronger, younger. So the insecure narcissist will then attack, insult, and differentially abuse that person. But the narcissist may not even recognize that they think that person's better. Narcissists cannot just make room or welcome the idea that we all have our strengths. They are threatened by anyone who is good at what they do or who may be better than them. They need to scapegoat and remove or silence the person or the persons who are a threat. Scapegoating also happens when the narcissist perceives someone as being vulnerable or too willing to share emotions, which they see as weakness. This is similar to narcissists scapegoating those whom they perceive as weak, but this is just a little bit different. A healthy person who is self-aware and open with their emotions may stumble onto a narcissist in his or her life. And because narcissists are so afraid of emotion and they're so afraid of true empathy, in some ways, they may even perceive this emotionally open and vulnerable person as a threat. Scapegoating may be manifested as sort of shaming the vulnerable person for sharing their emotions. Ironically, the vulnerable person in this story, the scapegoat here, is actually the strong one. But it feels very devastating to be scapegoated simply because you're emotionally open. But that's just too much of a threat to the narcissist. But overall, the most compelling dynamic that has the deepest psychological roots is that the narcissist perceives something in the other person that evokes a strong emotion in the narcissist. And it's something that the narcissist is uncomfortable with in him or herself. And this can either be very linear, a narcissistic parent, for example, scapegoating a child who is not good at sports, or it can be paradoxical. A narcissist scapegoating someone who is able to succeed in something they cannot do well. So for example, an example would be like the narcissist scapegoating the really warm and loving spouse that everyone loves being with, because the narcissist knows at some primitive level that people don't look forward to seeing him or her, but they sure as heck do love seeing the wife. The scapegoating becomes a primitive form of self-harm. It's as though the narcissist is punishing the other person out of an inner rage about what the narcissist, him or herself, is lacking. I know that feels like a whole lot of psychobabble, but given how paradoxical and venomous that scapegoating can seem, you recognize that it comes from a deep, dark place within the narcissist that doesn't really conform to any rational reason. Not, honestly, that there could ever be a rational reason for being chronically unkind to another person. Scapegoating does tremendous harm to the person that's impacted by it. It can be catastrophic. It can erode your sense of trust and safety and foster a lifelong sense of anxiety. Worthless and unlovable. So why do narcissists scapegoat? For the same reasons to why bullies bully. Insecurity, having to put on a false show of strength by lashing out at the person who represents a threat or who represents an easy target. The core insecurity of the narcissist means that acting out in that manner may communicate to the world that the narcissist is actually strong when inside they are weak and they are insecure. It's also linked to the dynamic of projection, whereby the narcissist projects their unresolved conflicts and internal anxieties onto those around them, especially the targets that trigger the narcissist's insecurities. Many people who have been scapegoated sometimes even just go with it and feel that it is the only way that they can even be noticed in a family or other system. It's like they're going to just keep playing to that scapegoated role to be noticed. Again, we must advocate for those who experience this kind of abuse. The narcissist will not stop doing it. Taking responsibility is not a narcissist's strong suit, so they will gaslight you and tear you down more and more. So they will gaslight you and tear you down more and more. They will gaslight you and tear you down more and more. The scapegoating loses its power When you don't engage with it, loses its power. When you don't engage with it, loses its power. When you don't engage with it. And sadly, they will move on to their next scapegoat in quick order. And I'm sure you're thinking, oh my goodness, I so wish I could protect that person from happening. Honestly, the most important advocacy you can do is the advocacy you do for yourself. In so doing, you may be able to protect others, maybe not from this narcissist, but from other scapegoated situations.